The St. Louis Blues pulled off 2 straight comeback victories in Week 1 before falling in their final game of the week, but they ended with a record of 2-1-0 so far. So how has the team performed as a whole, and which players have been highlights or weak points for the team? What do we think of the Blues' outlook for the season based on this first week of play? Alec and I are going to talk about all that and more today on Note News. Woo! It's hockey season, baby. We made it. I know we've been talking about our excitement for a few weeks now, but we really are here. We got games to talk about. It's like Christmas.
We got fun games to talk about.
Fun games. It's like Christmas and your birthday all wrapped into one. Alec, give me one word to describe how you're feeling now that the season is underway.
Fun. It's fun.
Fun. I feel ecstatic. Hockey season is
well, if we're going that way, then I would say more of an ebullient, perhaps.
Okay. Big brain. We're going to talk about the Blues' first week of play. Some really fun games to talk about here, albeit a little bit stressful. But fun games, definitely interesting first week of play. Before we get into it, we'd really appreciate it if you would like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and rate the podcast. Follow it wherever you listen, whether on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate that. Now that we're into the thick of the season, that really helps us out. It goes a long way. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod, where we post some cool graphics, some shorter videos, even some memes occasionally. So if you want to follow along with those, then that's the place to do that. So we appreciate all those that have done that so far. Alec, based on this first week of the Blues season, right, where they played the Seattle Kraken, the San Jose Sharks, and the Vegas Golden Knights, they won 2 games and lost 1. Just sort of like as a whole, like how do you feel about the team? We'll get into sort of our big picture takeaways towards the end of the episode, but just like how do you feel about this team based on this first week? Whether it's you're feeling positively about them, you're down on them, are you holding out, or do you feel neutral? Are you holding out to decide, or just what are your thoughts?
I think this is going to have to be a very nuanced episode for me. I feel like most people are pretty excited and like deservingly so. You know, coming off of 2 wins, 2-1-0 in 3 games is obviously a winning record, and that's exciting. They won when they had to, but I do think I'm very much still like pumping the brakes on the season or any like big takes about that. I think there's a lot to get into here, and I think we'll go through it as we do. So, yeah, I'd say like tentatively, I'm excited about this team, but there's going to be some probably ugly or bad to come up with, even in what we've seen so far. But hey, let's enjoy the good while we have it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good mindset to have. Especially, I think you're gonna need to sort of bring me back down to earth on a couple of things, maybe. Because I am excited, and I think I'm just mostly excited that the season is here. That probably translates into some optimism around the Blues. But it's the beginning of the season where anything can happen. Optimism reigns supreme. Let's go ahead and talk about this first game against the Seattle Kraken. It was a 3-2 victory. Sort of the overall story of the game. Seattle was pretty dominant, especially in the first half of the game, but not for long. Not for long, because at the end of the second period, the Blues stormed back and finished with like a strong third period. They really locked it down and came away with the victory. Seattle spent a lot of time in the offensive zone, but the Blues sort of capitalized on their chances when it mattered, and ultimately came away with the victory. In terms of like the scoring in that game, Kyrou scored the first goal on the power play. He was assisted by Robert Thomas and Justin Falk. Kyrou is one speedy guy. He sure can skate. Let's see. Then Philip Broberg scored his first goal as a Blue. Scored from range. That was really exciting. That got me hyped up. It was assisted by Justin Falk and Dylan Holloway, which is kind of cool. And then that final goal came from Kyrou again, which was assisted by Texier, and that was all in under 2 minutes. And then, like I said, they locked it down. they were really good last year. I believe the record was 29-1-1 when leading after two periods, and they kept up that trend, sort of with this game in particular. Right, they only allowed four shots in the third period and didn't allow a single shot on goal in the final 11 minutes and 50 seconds, which is sort of crazy lockdown defense, which is exactly what you want to see, especially when you have a lead late, and not a big lead too. So they got it done. Um, what do you make of game one, a 3-2 victory?
I'll start there at the end, and I think that is a good thing to bring up is that this was a strength for this team last year, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
reason this can't be a strength for this team for a lot of the similar personnel, and even with the new additions, Bannister, keeping that same coaching style going.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was really cool to see them sort of lock down and dominate. And I think a takeaway from this game and the first three games so far is that the Blues are kind of a slow start team. I feel like the first periods of each of these games have not been super exciting. And then second, third period rolls around and sort of we start to find our footing and so there's positives and negatives to that of like, well, when they turn it on, they can score three goals within the span of just a couple minutes and quickly flip a game script on its head. That's exciting, but also like if you go down too much because you come out flat, that's really hard mentally to overcome, even if you've got the skill to do it on any
Yeah.
given night. And it's just putting yourself behind the eight ball, which only makes the whole rest of the night harder. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I just wish I saw a little bit more consistency, but as I said, a win is a win, and a comeback win is really another takeaway from these couple early games. I think is that like this team is grit, and they have fight, and they
Yeah.
want to win at least, especially in the second and third periods. But I'll start there.
Yeah, I agree. I think the fact that they had so much success when leading after two periods, like the fact that they have the ability to sort of like lock it down defensively, right? What that says to me is that when they're tied or losing and they're trying to score, not that they're not trying to score when they have a lead necessarily, but it's like it looks like they're almost when they're not leading, it that makes it sort of look like the desperation leads to poor defense, if that makes sense. It's like they're trying on offense, they're trying to score, and that sort of ultimately leads to some miscues and defensive sacrifices. And so when you have the lead and you don't have to go all out to try and score, they're able to get it done better defensively. Ideally, they'd be good at offense and defense no matter what, but it doesn't always work out that way. But let's talk about some individual player performances. Starting with Jordan Bennington, 30 saves. He had a 938 save percentage. He still looks good, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, yep.
goaltending goaltending
He's
looks
still
good
that
early on.
guy.
Yeah. He had a rougher game, which we'll get to against Vegas, but still looks like a legit goalie, which is all you can ask for. Justin Falk had two assists, good individual offense, solid like team defense when he was on the ice, and I mean I sort of was calling for him to step up. Not that he heard me or anything, but like that's something that I thought could help make this team good is if he stepped up on offense. And in the early going, he is definitely doing that. So that was really cool to see. Robert Thomas looked good, doing what he does, contributing all around. Let's see, Dylan Holloway also looked pretty solid. His sort of individual offensive contribution mostly, and then Colton Parayko, although he didn't like have anything to show for it in terms of points, his underlying offensive statistics looked pretty good. He led the team in like individual expected goals. He helped create a lot of scoring chances, rush attempts, things like that. So um, yeah, so I think those are the players that I want to highlight. Do you have any others that you want to mention from this first game against Seattle?
From the first game, I don't believe so. I think that pretty much covers it. I think this team is really like gelling together well on certain lines.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of exciting creativity. Um,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. I mean, like they went down early in the second, right? And they were tied after one. They gave up two goals, kind of pretty quick in succession, to start off the second period, and then I mean, Nathan Walker kind of got the team fired up. He was pushing and shoving, and then ultimately the team scoring started on the power play. Do you think this is the kind of performance that we would have seen from last year's Blues team in this situation? I mean, like, does last year's Blues team get back up after being knocked down like that? I feel like to me, so much of the team performance looked like a refreshed team. Maybe not a good team, like we've said. Maybe not like one of the legit teams in the league, but a refreshed team, and I would say a better team. So yeah, like, do you think last year's team could do that?
I think definitely. Well, I think last year's team could have done that. On like, there was still a step of difference between them and the 22-23 team. That team I
Right.
don't think could have done that.
Yeah.
I think last year's team might have had that in them, but probably if it was against the Kraken, who I mean, I think it's safe to say aren't one of the elite teams of the NHL, at least not right now. It felt like they were always playing down to their competition, so they probably wouldn't against the Kraken. If it were, I don't know, some other franchise like that was really difficult, maybe. But anyways, to your point, yeah, I think the biggest thing about this team, like there's been a lot of discussion about the identity of the Blues.
Hmm.
And you can get into like, well, offensively, it looks like they want to play fast. They want to win off the rush. Defensively, they don't really know how to stop the rush. You could maybe use those as um, performance based result or answers to that. But like, it feels like the identity of these team is like those kind of like scrappy underdogs, like who want to steal games, who want to um, like yeah, play hard and play the full 60 minutes. And so I think to answer your question, like we could have seen that from last year's team, but definitely like this is starting to be an identity of this year's team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely agree with all that. I mean, like, especially on the point of trying to find that identity, I think scrappiness is like one word, like early on, that it's sort of been defining, in a defining word to describe the successes of the team so far.
Hmm.
Maybe not quite so much when they mess up. That it doesn't come in come in handy as much then, but um, the successes and the bright spots of the team um, have come early on from like really, yeah, like scrappy plays and contributions from up and down the lineup. So far, it really seems like. Do you want to add anything on this first game, or do you want to go ahead and start to talk about game two?
I think all the points I have are more general to other. Yeah, so we can move
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Yeah, super exciting first game. Like a great way to start the season, I want to say, with a comeback win. I do want to say, Kairu had two goals in that first game. I'm pretty sure he only had two goals through the first month last year.
Hmm.
So definitely off to a much better start, leading the team in points so far. We'll talk more about his performance in with the next two games, but those first two goals, I think, could work wonders for like his confidence in the early going, which seemed like a big issue for him early last year. So if he gets off and continues like with this great start that he's had, then it could be the year that we. I mean, the sample size is small. We want to be careful. This is one of those points where we might have to sort of bring me back down to earth, like I was saying. But like, I mean, my bold prediction was a 40 goal season from Kairu, but I mean, is he on pace for 50 goals, Alec? Is it going to happen? Um, that's what I'm saying. You're gonna have to talk me down if you think I'm getting too excited, too bullish on this team. But let's talk
I mean,
about
do you
game
want
two.
to get into the Kyrie stuff now or like with some of the stuff in the later games?
We can just sort of take a bigger picture look at it after, because I mean
Sounds good.
his contributions were beyond the scoring from this first game. So I do want to
Hmm.
maybe revisit that. But game two was a 5-4 OT win versus the Sharks. Last week when we were previewing this game, I think you said they just have to come away with the win. It doesn't have to look convincing. They just have to, like, they can't keep losing to the Sharks. They they came away with a win. I would not describe it as convincing. Do you still like feel like that's your mindset and you're like, okay, like we at least got the win, or was there like more concerning play from this game that you're like, I don't feel great about that?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, they got the win, and I said
Yeah.
they have to, and I mean, clearly Justin Falk listened to what you had to say. The entire Blues team listened to what I had to say, and they wanted to win this game, and they did.
Yeah.
They had to get the win, and they did. And they did have to do it in overtime against the San Jose Sharks. So that doesn't feel great, but they pulled it out. I do think something from that game that is exciting is that overtime unit looked really good.
Yeah,
Maybe
all
that can be
45 seconds
something.
of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's our only exposure yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, they played really well in OT, so
Yeah.
they knew they had to get the win.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think it is definitely like you wish it was better, but at the end of the day, yeah,
I mean, to their credit, they for most of the game were the dominant team, right? Like, and just in terms of like pure hockey, not like not the score, but like in terms of the hockey being played on the ice, they were like dominating the game. They just made some mistakes and Nick Letty and gave up the lead early on and so uh, what I saw was like as one of the biggest issues was really like disjointed play, like really choppy. They couldn't really control the puck, couldn't connect on passes, and really
yeah,
that's just what bit them. They went down 4-1, and I will confess that's when I went to bed. Being on the East Coast like I am, it was just like already late, and I was like a 3 goal deficit against a team that they should be beating and they should have beat last year and couldn't do it. I was just frustrated. I hate to say I gave up the hope, but I did. But I was happy to wake up to a 5-4 OT winner. So they stormed back, tied it in the third, and then won an OT, of course. Um, just in terms of like the stat line, Buchnevich scored, which was assisted by Jordan Kyrou and Philip Broberg. Faxa scored, assisted by Walker. Suter scored, assisted by Toropchenko. And then Falk scored with, I believe, like 47 seconds left in the game, which was assisted by Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. And then, of course, Shin scored the OT winner, assisted by Colton Parayko and Robert Thomas. Um, I mean, got contributions from all around, honestly. I will say, like, the first period was really frustrating. Like
another
that
slow
period in
start.
particular, yeah, that period in particular was like the Blues should have scored more and given up less. Like it was just so frustrating that I mean, all the goals were kind of weird. Like Macklin Celebrini scored his first goal, but it went in off the skate of Matthew Kessel. You know, it was just
Hmm.
like weird goals like that, and they were down 2-1, even though they had 22 shots on goal in the first period. But um, yeah, I don't know. So it's like encouraging that they were playing well, like out of the gate, in terms of matching up with their opponent. But it was just like how is this happening again? Um, and then in the second period, San Jose scored a power play goal. Dude, Nick Letty, I'll just say it. He looked bad. He wasn't marking his man. And I mean, like, okay. So for the Sharks' second goal, right in the first period, I think it was Celebrini who had it behind the net, and I I mean I'm gonna call Letty shark bait because he took the bait, which I might
That's
be
pretty
being
good.
cheeky, but Nick Sharkbait Letty bit. He took the bait and abandoned his man who was like in a really high danger spot, and Celebrini just sort of like feathered it through to Foley, and he buried it. And then on that third goal, the Sharks were on power play, and Letty was just caught out of position on the penalty kill. It was so weird. It was like Zetterlund just like slowly he didn't even like he didn't have the puck. He just sort of slowly skated in, and like it looked like Nick Letty saw him and just didn't step to guard him, to mark his man. And I think he was like trying to like be able to go both ways if he had to, but um, I mean it was just like an easy goal for Zetterlund once he got the puck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you make of that? I decided I was going to be mean to Nick Letty today. And I know I don't want to come between you a boy, and your favorite veteran defenseman. But
Yeah, I mean,
what do you have to say for yourself, Alec?
the reason I liked Nick Letty was because I really liked the floor of his play and I really liked his consistency of essentially not making these stupid mistakes. And I'm like, I'm going to say it, I'm with you. He's had a really, really, really bad start to the season.
Yeah.
You can arguably blame him for at least 2 goals and pretty poor play in other games all around. So yeah, he's not looked bad. I don't know if it's age finally catching up to him. I don't know what it is, honestly, but because as you said, it was just kind of weird, like nonchalant, poor play,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
He hasn't really been using Pareko as much either. Like it's just kind of all not there for him. So yeah, I mean, from what we've seen, I'm with you, and I hate to like, I don't mean to totally overreact to a 3 game sample size, because I feel like a lot of my opinions on Blues players so far are very much one way or the other. And Nick Letty is like kind of at the bottom of my list right now, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, yeah. Other than that, it was good that they showed the fight and some really really cool goals. That I mean that Booch goal was so nice.
Yeah.
Him and Kairu are on another level right now. I'm gonna get into that later. But
Yeah.
that's been fun to see. Um,
For
yeah,
sure.
defensively just didn't look good in this game. Not just Nicoletti, I think all around. And the other point you brought up was the passing. That has
Hmm.
been another thing that is a little bit worrying because that isn't usually something that just pops up and goes away. That's
Yeah.
usually indicative of more of a like maybe the coaching isn't good enough, the players haven't spent enough time together, they're not on the same page or whatever. But that to me is my biggest worry about this Sharks game was that the passing, especially like in and through the neutral zone, was really out of sync, really bad.
Yeah, I noticed Dylan Holloway in particular struggling with that. And honestly, I wonder if the issue is like it's a good issue to have, but Robert Thomas being like such a good passer that it's like it's coming more direct and like more quickly than he's expecting, and it's like also coming at times when he's like, oh, like he got a pass to me, like I wasn't like expecting that. Like he played on one of the lower lines in Edmonton, and I can't remember who his center would have been, but he wasn't playing with like probably not as good a center as Robert Thomas, and not as good a passer as Robert Thomas. And honestly, I just think it's an adjustment for him. We saw, I believe, was it the first game or was it this game or was it both? Where I think it was the first game where they just kind of like changed the first line for a little bit until there was like some scoring. So I think there is going to have to be an adjustment period for Dylan Holloway if he's going to keep playing on the top line, try to like learn how to be ready for those passes and corral them. In terms
Mhm.
of that though, you said being a concern. It definitely was concerning watching that for a full game. Or I guess like I said, the parts that I watched until I rage quitted on the game, but watching like the Vegas Golden Knights game, which we'll get to in a minute, at least early on, it looked much better. Like the passes
Mhm.
were crisp. They were controlling the puck. They like early on, like they came out of the gate and had I think most of the possession early on and looked really good until they gave up that first goal. But um, I think it is early on. We don't have as big a sample size as we would like, So it'll have to be something that we sort of keep track of. But I am like a little bit optimistic that they were able to make the adjustment the following night and look better, at least at the beginning. But let's get back to this Sharks game. So they gave up a shorthanded goal and a power play goal in the second period. Um, they ultimately went down 4-1, and then in the third period is really, when they really came alive. This is like I think the biggest takeaway for this game is late in the game when players are tired. This could be like the identity of the Blues, like you were saying, a scrappy team that takes advantage of maybe a team being tired, and then gets a lot of contribution from these lower lines and lower pairs. This uh, People are calling it the WTF line, which is the Blues fourth
Walker,
line of Walker, Torpchenko, and Faxa.
Torpo, and Faxa.
Yeah, it really seemed like I mean they were the ones that got the Blues back in it. They were kind of wearing out the Sharks late. You can't really ask for anything more out of your fourth line, but they gave you more. Radek Faxa scored, and then this is on defense, but Ryan Suter scored as well to get the Blues within one. And then at the end, like I said, Justin Falk scored with 47 seconds left to tie it. The Blues had Hofer pulled. They had the extra skater. But like in terms of like player performances to highlight, for me, it's just like the entire fourth line. They were the ones that were most impactful, I think, on the outcome of the game. They played 10 minutes and 31 seconds, which was the highest for like a complete line that stayed together as a line on the team. Radek Fax is one gritty guy. I can't remember some of the points you were making when the Blues first acquired him, but do you think he's going to be a more significant contributor than maybe we were expecting?
Um, I I'll go off that first point about when we first acquired him first. I
Yeah,
think this was kind of always how he played, but I don't know that I ever felt maybe it just wasn't seeing enough of him, which could totally be, but I don't know that I ever felt like this level of just like competition from him. And I really think that's something about this Blues team is like they want to fight. They want to um, you know, what is it, death by a million paper cuts, or just
yeah,
like slowly wear you down and just be a little like mischievous, gnomes biting at your ankles or whatever. And I don't really know. Like Fax always played physical and played hard, but like I feel like it feels more of a team thing than just Faxa himself. As like this desire to just be like nuisances essentially.
hmm
Um, in terms of could we see more from Faxa? I mean, totally. That's sports. But to give maybe a little bit better of an answer, I still don't know that I'm expecting a lot more out of Radek Faxa. I think he's had a good start to his season, and I think if he plays like this the entire season, that'll be meets if not exceeds expectations. That being
for sure.
said, I don't know that I'm gonna be penciling him in for one of our like 20, maybe even 15 goal scorers, or
Yeah, yeah,
like really anything more than the fourth line center.
that's fair. I think we've talked about it recently. I mean, really, what you're looking for from this bottom line in particular is just be hard to play against, right? Like be gritty, be scrappy, be tough, wear them out. Because I mean, you do that for a full 60, and you're gonna find something, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, that's all I'm asking for. And in this game, we got a little bit extra, which was cool. So
Yeah.
um, that was definitely encouraging. Let me pose this next question to you. Have the Blues found their next Norris Trophy winner with Ryan Suter?
No.
But he scored. He scored,
Ah,
Alec.
then yes.
Yes, there we go. He looked okay offensively. I mean, he got the goal. I mean, in terms of his individual production, um, it was okay. But I think when he was on the ice, the team as a whole did well offensively, which I don't know how much you can credit to him, but it's worth something, I think. Um, let's see. Do you think that the issues we saw in this game in terms of choppy, disjointed play, poor puck possession, and then other issues like defensive lapses from players like Nick Leddy and others. Like, do you think these are fixable issues? I know you said with the sort of the passing and puck possession, it's like a concern you have that might not go away. But what about like some of these other issues that we saw?
I think they're things that can progress with the season. I don't know that it's going to be much better for the rest of like October or even November. Maybe towards the end of November or into the December slash next year. Um, that's when you can start to see real progress on things like this. Um, Also, I do think that the Suter goal was nice, but I still haven't really been impressed. I mean, not impressed is the right word because expectations were pretty low. I think he's kind of been at my expectation, and I'm kind of low on Ryan Suter's plays so far. I don't think he's looked
Yeah,
great. A third pair defenseman, and we kind of knew what we were getting, so I don't think this is earth shattering analysis here to say that Ryan
yeah,
Suter might not be good anymore. Um, but yeah, I would say like I think honestly, I think that in the short term, no, these aren't going to go away. In the long term, it definitely could.
hmm
But I think there's going to be a lot of really. I was going to get into this later too. I think this year there's going to be a lot of really bad losses and a
mm
lot of really exciting wins. And luckily, the pendulum has swung one way so far into the season, but I kind of feel like there's going to be a couple probably ugly games where just the team can't overcome putting themselves so far back with some of these, missing simple passes or um, penalties drawn or stuff like that. So,
yeah, yeah. I think that's fair. It does take time for some of these things to sort of like wash out, and hopefully that'll improve as like the players start to gel a little better. But like on that point, with like the top nine in the forward core in particular, there was like a lot, like a decent amount of turnover this offseason, bringing in Holloway and Matthew Joseph and names like that that are gonna have to be like significant contributors if the Blues want to be successful. And so it will take a little bit of time,
Bolduc
I
and
think.
Neighbors too, like getting
Yeah,
real roles.
yeah, right. So like it will take a little time for them to sort of learn how to play together. So again, the sample size is definitely small, and we're gonna have to keep an eye on these things as they progress. But let's go ahead and talk about the last game of the week, Game 3, which was a 4-3 loss to the Vegas Golden Knights. This was like the biggest test of the early season for the Blues up to this point. Um, what did you make of this game? Like, did you come away feeling positively or negatively about this? Because the Golden Knights are good, right? We knew it would be a tough game. Are you? Does the loss discourage you, or like, are there other takeaways that you make from this game that make you feel differently about the team? Like, I think you know what I'm getting at. Like, I thought
Yeah.
the Blues actually looked okay. But
Hmm.
what do you think?
Yeah. I want to make this point really quick because I don't. It's such a frustrating thing because there's really not much analysis you can do to it. I think a big problem with the Blues the past couple years that we've seen is them both playing down to the level of their competition and playing up to the level of their competition. And
Hmm
you would argue that if you're playing up to the level of good competition, why can't you do that the rest of the season? And I think that I have a little worry from this game that there might be a little bit of that still in this team, because let me get that straight, that isn't clear, or sorry, let me get that clear, that isn't good to have such night in night out variance, especially when playing like bad teams. You just want to be a good team that plays hard
hmm
and puts it all out there. So to answer your question, I actually agree. I think that they did pass this test, and I really liked what we saw from even in a loss from against Vegas. Um, was that them playing up to the level of a good Golden Knights team? Maybe, but like that team has that in there, and we will just see as the season goes whether or not they
hmm
can continue that level of play against higher level opponents. But anyways, about
hmm
Vegas here, I agree. I really liked how they looked. As you said, they looked crisp, they looked coordinated, they looked well coached. And there were some bad goals in there. Well, there were some. unfortunate goals in there, but some of them like the Stone goal and then the rush chance that is escaping me who it was. Like those are kind of just really nice plays in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, this was the reason the Blues lost to me. I was going to ask you this question sort of at the end, but like we can go ahead and do it now because we're already here. The reason that the Blues lost, in my mind, is just the mistakes that they made played like perfectly into Vegas's strengths. They're a really
That's
good
true.
team off the rush. They're a really good team in transition. Like they love when you turn it over and then you can't get back. Like they will if you you do that, they will you'll get bitten for it against the Golden Knights. Like, um, let's see, with like the first goal, they failed to execute on the forecheck, right? Like Shin and Neighbors were sort of crowded around the puck up against the boards in the offensive zone. They just failed to execute that, and then they just let Vegas move the other way. And then I mean also Pareko was in the neutral zone and was a little bit indecisive with like if he wanted to press or fall back, and ultimately those two mistakes led to the goal. And the next goal was given up in like a pretty similar fashion. They lost it in the offensive zone. They didn't get back. They didn't have enough men to defend the rush, and they got bitten for it again. So it's like things like that. They like they'll bite you on the rush. They'll bite you when you make a defensive miscue, which there was some of that in this game as well. That's the reason I think they lost. Do you have anything else that you think contributed to that, or is that
I
pretty
feel
much
like
cover it?
sorry. I feel like on that point we saw excuse me, very similar issues in the Sharks game. It's just the
Yeah,
talent level between the San Jose Sharks and the Vegas Golden Knights is so different that yeah, a team like Vegas is going to make you pay when you make those mistakes. And but I still like that we saw that level of fight. I mean, I guess we'll get into the good in a second. I like that we still saw that same like, no, we know we can win this game coming down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, in terms of why they lost, I think I agree with you. I like that point about how it played right into their strengths. Also, I think more so, in my opinion, just Vegas has some really good playmakers, and their really good playmakers made really good plays, and so did
yeah,
ours. But we fell behind. I don't know. I'm mostly looking at it as a that's sports loss, and sorry that isn't really that deep, but truly, like it was a great game, and
for
I'm
sure.
pretty happy with most of what we saw. Um, uh,
Yeah, yeah. Your MVP pick though, Jack Eichel, right? He looks pretty good.
yeah, that like that
Feeling good
he's
about that
just
one.
is one of the, in my opinion, 25 best skaters in the NHL when healthy, and
For sure.
that can happen. Like that's just if
Yeah,
a player of that level makes a play like that, you kind of just got to tip your hat, in my opinion.
for sure. In terms of the good, we've sort of dissected what went wrong for the most part. But in terms of the good, to break down the scoring here, Buchnevich scored the first goal of the game, which was assisted by Kyrou and Broberg. That was a pretty sweet goal, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It
he he
was so
got
nice.
he got Noah Hannafin to bite and leave his position between Booch and the goal, and he just lifted it up and put it in. It was pretty sweet. And then second goal, Buchnevich again, assisted by Kyrou and Falk. That was a power play goal. The team looked pretty efficient on that power play, I thought. Quick passes, finding each other in space, and then Buchnevich like waited exactly the right time. Didn't wait like too long. Like a second more, and it would have been too long. He could have gotten blocked or whatever. But they were efficient. They were quick, and he got it in again. And then the third goal was Robert Thomas, who was assisted by Buchnevich and Pareko. It was a pretty sweet pass from Buchnevich, who also contributed defensively on that play. And he found Thomas moving down the middle, who just buried it upstairs against Aiden Hill. But I mean, at that point, it was just like too little, too late. But I mean, Buchnevich looked good, dude. This was a good game for him, I thought.
Yeah, I think he's looked so good all season, and I mean
Mhm.
that power play goal too was like, that was kind of it got like a pretty big head tilt out of me.
Mm.
As I mentioned, like the power play was something I was worried about, and that was like kind of I don't know if this is too much to call it, but kind of elite power play movement. I mean, they just dissected that zone.
Yeah,
Falk having playing his role nicely as the quarterback, stretched out the defense with the pass down low to Kyrie, where normally one timers are taken, but instead he turns, lifts it to Booch, and he just buries it. I mean, that like it was crisp, it was clean. They looked like they'd been practicing this for months.
yeah,
Um,
you're right.
I think that goal was one of my biggest things about this game is like this top power play unit can be really good. The rest of the special teams, I don't
Yeah,
know, but the top power play, like those five when healthy, can hang with the best.
for sure. I'm not saying that they're an elite power play unit, but if it looks like that every time, that's what an elite that's what an elite power
I
play unit
mean,
looks like.
yeah, I think they could be flirting with that as not as a
Yeah,
team, but as like that group in itself.
yeah.
So
I think
far,
they
so
can show.
far.
Yeah. They've showed flashes of that so far. Yeah, for sure. Zach Bolduc, I thought had a couple. I mean, he
Hmm.
looked okay. Like he had a lot of good looks. Really close to the net. I mean, Aiden Hill made some pretty impressive saves against him, I will say, but like he just couldn't bury it. So that's a bummer. That would have sort of changed the tide of the game, I think, if he had been able to get one of those in, because the third Vegas Golden Knights goal came from another defensive miscue by Nick Leddy. I guess it wasn't a defensive miscue, I guess, but just another miscue. He was trying to get a pass ahead to Radek Faksa, who wasn't looking. I mean, honestly, watching replay of that play, like Letty was just like looking at the puck, and he wasn't really he had seen, I guess, Faxa moving forward, and then like tried to bounce it off the wall to him, but just like wasn't looking around to see who was ready to receive the puck, and it just bounced off Faxa's skate. They turned it over, and he probably should have just cleared that puck, moved it forward, but um, what you gonna do? What's done is done.
Hmm.
And they took advantage of that. Going, I mean, in transition, it was like pretty quick in transition, but they, went back on offense pretty quick and took advantage of that. Um, Really, the third period though, it wasn't too bad. They looked decent. They were just never really able to get high danger looks and high danger scoring chances on Vegas. Like Robert Thomas's goal was really good. Like that was a good play. Um, it was just too little, too late. They gave up the game winner. Like they were just sort of out of position, and Bennington, I think, had like two guys like right there in front of them, and there's only so much you can do when you're Jordan Bennington. So that was tough. But I mean, like you said, my big takeaway was that the Blues looked good against a good team, and if they can be more consistent, not playing down to bad opponents, but keeping this potential that they've showed against good teams in the past, if they can just keep that up, then the season could go a lot differently than last year, I feel like. Um, so
Yeah.
Buchnevich, we've talked about, he looked really good. Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas continue to look good even when they're not scoring, right? Like Kyrou got
Hmm.
those two goals in the first game, but he's found ways to contribute without scoring goals. He had assists on both Buchnevich goals in this game, so he's finding ways to contribute. Even when he doesn't have the puck, he's finding ways to contribute, which is really cool. And then sort of in a similar way, Broberg is doing that too. He scored a goal in the first game. He's had a couple of assists so far. He looks good. Um, our favorite veteran defenseman, yours Letty and mine Pareko, didn't look good. Both of them
Yeah.
didn't do so good. Although I do want to say that my favorite defenseman could beat up your favorite veteran defenseman. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say.
Uh, Power scaling's
Um,
gone too far out of hand.
um, okay, I'll leave him alone. Going into, I don't know if we talked about this last week, but going into this first week of play, if I had asked you last week before the season had started, what record do you want to see them have after this first week? What would you have said? I mean, like obviously 3-0. 3-0 is what you would have said, but
Yeah.
like you know what I mean. Like what do you want to see here realistically from the Blues? You probably would have said 2-1, right?
Yeah, I mean, technically it would have been 2-0-1, but
Yeah, I guess so. Um, yeah, I
yeah,
guess you're right.
yeah. I
But
mean, happy with the 2-1 week for sure. Some things that are a little worrying, some things that didn't look great, but overall 2-1 week. First week one of NHL hockey for the Blues, I think gets a thumbs up, gold star.
thumbs up, thumbs up. I mean, yes, like at the end of the season, it's not going to matter like the way that these games were won in, right? Like you don't want this to become a trend where they have to fight back. It's good that they can do it, but you don't want it to be a thing where they have to fight back
Yeah.
from a deficit every time. And then in terms of the Vegas game, I think we would have we would have picked that to be the loss if there was one. Like they were so strong early on. That one just sort of felt like collapse in the middle. Really, like
Mm-hmm.
they started strong, they finished like decently, not great, but decently. It just kind of got bitten in the middle. Do you want to
Yeah.
do you want to give me like your big takeaways from week one? What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from this week?
Do you want me to go good or bad here?
Let's start let's start bad and end on a more positive note.
Okay. So there aren't as many bad notes that I have. One is the defense. It does not look awesome. I don't think the forwards have been exceptional, although I think they've been holding their own and have been better than we've seen, but are still okay. And then, yeah, Letty's looked bad. I'm going to be honest. I haven't loved Pareko's play so far. I think he can take a step up. Um, Falk has been good. Broberg's been fine. And then P.O. Joseph is unplayable, if you ask me.
Really,
Um,
I thought he looked
maybe
okay in a couple plays.
maybe that's just me, but I guess it is one game, and I'm definitely overreacting, as I said. But I really did not like what I saw from him.
What was it, if you
So
don't mind me asking?
I mean, just like he was so non-committal to anything, like so
Hmm.
worried to not make a play that often he just wouldn't have any effect on the game. It kind of looked like how Nick Leddy is playing, honestly.
Hmm.
But it's one game and it's his first game in a while, so
Yeah.
we'll give him a break for now. But uh, I think the defense as a whole has been pretty bad. Um, and I was hoping at least that they could be like a middle of the pack unit, and there was upside to be top. What did I say? 12, top 10,
Hmm. Something
somewhere
like
around
that.
there.
Yeah.
As like the ceiling, and
Hmm.
I could still see that, but it has got to turn around if they want to get there. The other thing is that the non-first power play special teams unit, I don't know that I love how those are looking so far. Um, like I don't really know that we need Shen taking a lot of power play or just special teams time at this point now. Suter also like feels like there are better options there, even if those are the veterans. So
Yeah.
the second power play is pretty anemic, and the both penalty kill units look okay at best.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know that they really excite me though.
Yeah.
Um, So that's I think the negative so far, and then that point about also just like I really hope that trend of variance doesn't continue. But
Yeah.
there's been a lot of good. And what I want to talk about, what I've been waiting to talk about all episode, Jordan Cairo and Pavel Buchnevich look so good, like to a level. Maybe for Buchnevich, he's had a good career. You could argue he's played close to this level before, but I think this is the best Jordan Cairo's ever looked. Period. End of story. It's
Interesting.
only 3 games, and I don't know that you can't really realistically like extrapolate this out to the full season yet because they haven't shown it. But like to me, they look like 90-point players or more. Like you talked about, we need that elite level guy to take the next step as a team. If they keep playing like this, like they could combine for, I think somewhere in the realm of 180 points. I think they look awesome. They're playing awesome together. Buchnevich as a center has been, I think,
Did you say
a success
180?
so far. Like in like combined for both players.
Yeah. For real?
I think so. Like they look awesome. One of them breaks
Okay. Yeah.
100, the other 80 points, or they're both sitting around 90. Yeah, like
Okay. Okay.
seriously, I think they've been so good. Both
No, I
with
love
the
it.
puck and without it.
Yeah.
Buchnevich looks so weirdly like calm and like he's been playing center his entire life.
Hmm.
And Kyrou just something about it is like leveled up his game and taken another step, finally like putting it all together. Now, it's only 3 games in, so I'm not saying that it's reasonable to expect this to continue as of right now, but
Hmm.
for the time being, they I'm gonna say it. I think they have been the best players on the team. Better than
Yeah.
Binnington, better than Thomas.
No, I
Um,
think I'd agree with you for sure.
so if that's like that, if that continues, that would be ideal. But I'm not sure that I think it's gonna be. Yeah. Um, Other
Okay.
things I've actually really liked. I'll go quick through these.
Hmm.
Just general takeaways from week
Hmm.
one. I've really, honestly, maybe not really liked, but I've liked what I've seen from Bolduc and Neighbors, even though they've been pretty quiet. I think they're both kind of playing that like um, ugly, down low, like behind the net or in front of the tender, like throwing hits, playing physical type
Yeah.
role. Both of them definitely still have
Hmm.
defensively are a long way to go. And
Yeah.
that's excuse me. I think that's just to be expected though, especially for like young wingers. Like it's hard enough to play defense as a winger, let alone for it to be your like I guess Bolduc first and a half, second full year, and Neighbors like second half, third full year in the
Hmm.
NHL. So I don't know that I ever expected their defense to be that good. Um, but I've liked how they've played. I think the results will come. So I'm not really worried about them. Holloway too. Holloway I think has looked pretty good. I'm not really sure where he'll fit on the lines, but I think I've liked what I've seen out of him.
Hmm.
And then yeah, as we said, that first power play unit is arguably among the best in the league, maybe. And
So far.
Bennington looks awesome, but
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit of my thoughts on sort of that point of Buchnevich and Kyrie being so good. I have been talking, and you've voiced that you sort of agree with me, but I think I have sort of been pushing like I think Kyrie should be on the top line with Robert Thomas. Um, that being said, as long as they keep looking great together, I'm willing to keep that rolling. I think the issue is that, like if Buchnevich works out as a center, which would be great if he would, um, like and we have Kyrie playing on his wing, we just got to get Robert Thomas some help on the top line. So you heard it here first. Blues are going to get Mitch Marner next summer and, and put him on that top line with Robert Thomas. How
it
fun would
just
that
makes
be?
sense.
How fun would
I
that be?
mean,
That'd be so fun.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
you would kind of hope too that like someone of Thomas's caliber can elevate like if there's
yeah,
maybe a second line or third line guy playing on top line can be okay, and I think
yeah.
Thomas's production will be there. But yeah, his wingers around him are not as elite, and there's something else I was going to say on Buch and Cairo, but I guess all the points have been made.
Yeah, I guess on the point of Robert Thomas sort of elevating the game around him, I guess the help that he gets could look like uh, Jake Neighbors and Dylan Holloway sort of getting more comfortable playing with him so consistently and finding ways to make that work. So, um, I mean, he looks good. Like he's continues to be Robert Thomas, I guess is is the big takeaway there.
Yeah,
Um, I definitely agree with all your points. I was looking through. You asked if I wanted to start with the bad or the good for yours, and I realized that all the takeaways that I have are good, which is maybe not exactly a realistic view of the team, but it's just that's just the excitement I'm feeling early on. So I think I think it's fun. I think it's been a fun week. My big takeaway is that the team is better than last year's, and I don't think it's like it is early. Yes, I know it is early, and I know it's a small sample size, but I'm seeing performances, both on like a team level and an individual performance level, that you wouldn't really have seen as much of last year. I know the sample size is small. Like I just said, this is going to be something that we have to monitor as the season goes on. The power play percentage is 33%. The penalty kill is 80%. And then in terms of face-off percentage, they are third in the league so far with 55.96 percentage. In terms of like middle of the pack, or I'm sorry, in terms of like expected goal percentage and generating scoring chances, they are middle of the pack. But I'm just seeing early trends for the team and for specific players that we didn't see last year. Whether it's Kyrie getting off to a much stronger start, or like you said, the power play looking good, with Falk as the QB, stuff like that. And then like those sort of gritty wins where like the lower lines, against San Jose in particular, with like that fourth line pretty much being like the biggest contributor. Like I don't know how much we were seeing of that last year, and so I think the team is better. I think the reason they were so good last year is mostly Jordan Bennington. Like honestly, like 75% of it was Jordan Bennington and Joel Hofer being really good goaltenders. So if they can get some help, this team could be really good, like we've been saying. Um, just a lot of fight and resilience in the team, which I like to see. You don't want to have to fight back every time, like I said, but that's a big takeaway for me is the resilience they've showed early on. And then my last takeaway, which is sort of my more fun takeaway, is that I think Justin Falk and Philip Broberg. I was talking about last week, just like put Broberg on the top line, playing with Pareko. My new take is just make Falk and Broberg the top line. They've looked really they've looked really good early on, at least offensively. Um, they've played 47 minutes, and like 26 seconds on the ice together, through these first three games. They're generating offense at a pretty solid level so far. They've each got a goal. Falk has 3 assists and Broberg has 2. So they're really contributing on the offense, and they're generating like high danger scoring chances, at a pretty solid rate, at a much higher rate, than Pareko and Letty. They also haven't allowed a goal yet, I believe. I think I have that right. Is that they haven't allowed a goal when they're on the ice together. And they only have 1.83 expected goals against, whereas as Pareko and Letty have just over 3 expected goals against. So like, to me, in the early going, I'm not saying it'll continue this way, but Broberg and Falk are basically the Blues' top defensive pair. I think they're just like they're better on both sides than Pareko and Letty. What do you think? Should they just like swap them?
I mean, I guess to clarify, like, do you think that they should be the top pair going forward, or are you just saying that they have been through 3 games?
Maybe a little bit of both. Like I don't
Hmm.
know. I mean, again, the sample size is really small, so I think either way, we would just need to like we just need to wait, like, and see how they continue to perform. I was saying, put Broberg on the top line or top pair, put him on the top pair, but like sort of in the same way that I'm cool with riding the way that Kyrie and Buchnevich are playing together. I feel the same way about Falk and Broberg. They're looking pretty solid, as a pair, and I'm hoping that'll only get better as they continue to sort of learn how to play together. I guess
Yeah.
excited early season hockey. John says yes, make them the top pair, but maybe realistic, pragmatic, burned in the past by my sports teams. John is saying maybe hold off on that, for a little bit.
Inside of you, there are 2 wolves.
Yeah, yeah. Colton Pareko fan and Philip Broberg fan.
I agree with the one part of that assertion that like they have been the best defenseman on the Blues through 3
Yeah.
games. I don't really know
Hmm.
that that's even a take. I think that's kind of just a fact,
Hmm.
at least in our opinions. But I think I would still stick with at least I would stick with Pareko on the top line. Letty, I'm
Yeah.
like very okay with moving implement or trying out something else if
Yeah.
especially if like Tuesday looks like that again.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I also like at this point, I'm not sure what he's doing on the penalty kill anymore. Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
he
what
needs.
I think
I
the
think the
personnel
leash.
decisions on the PK are really questionable.
Yes, I think the leash should be pretty short for Letty moving forward. I hope I'm not making you too sad, but I'm mad at Nick Letty this week.
I mean, I am too. I'm gonna call it how it is. It's not. I'm not just. Um, he hasn't earned that level of trust with me yet.
Fair enough. Okay, so that's the first week of play. You already gave it a thumbs up and a gold star, but I'm going to ask you to give it a letter grade now. How did they do in the first week?
Oh man, I mean,
I
this
want
is
to be
all
more
relative.
specific.
Yeah, all relative to expectation,
Hmm.
and it's so tough because of how it looked versus the results.
Hmm.
I don't know, man. I could debate on what's the right answer for hours, so I think I'm just gonna throw out um A minus from me because
That's high.
I was a lot lower on the team looking like this, and they've shown, even if it wasn't great, they've shown a lot more ability than I thought was there. So
Hmm.
there's a lot more to be excited about for the season for me than there was
Hmm.
before. So for that reason, I'm saying A minus.
That's higher than I was expecting. Um, I'm gonna give them. I'm gonna give them a B plus. I think that they have shown good flashes, whether it's on the power play or certain certain pairs or lines or specific player performances. Goodness, words are hard. Um, but like with getting down to the Sharks in that game, like if you had a better defenseman than Nick Letty, that may like, or if he didn't make those mistakes, that may not have happened. And then like again, like there were just a couple mistakes in the Vegas game, which is like why you lost. And I think the fact that those are more like, I don't know, like individual mistakes a lot of the time or something like that, and not like a systemic, like huge like team issue thing. Um, I think signals that it could be easily fixable. And again, we'll have to wait and see if if those kinds of things continue to be a trend for the team or if it's something that they can like get better at. But like the way I see it is if Nick Letty doesn't make those mistakes, or I don't want to be too mean to him, but like if you're not making those mistakes, then those games could have looked really different. Is sort of what I'm saying, and I think those are the kinds of things that are fixable with good coaching and good personnel decisions. And so as long as those decisions are made and that good coaching happens, then that could be cool. I think is sort of my take. So I'm gonna go with, what did I say? B plus,
B
B
plus.
B plus.
Yeah, so mine's way too low, but we're also within like 0.1% of each other technically.
What?
Because if mine's an A minus, I
Oh,
could have a 90, and they could have an 89.9.
I was saying yours was higher than I was expecting.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I misspoke. Then higher.
Okay,
But
yeah. So yes, we are maybe B plus and a half is sort of or A minus. No, yeah, B plus and a half is the cumulative note news grade for the Blues first week. Let's go ahead and preview the next week of play. So as we're recording this, it is Sunday, October 13th. So the records for these teams will change. But first, they're playing the Minnesota Wild at two. I don't know what time it is actually, but on Tuesday, the 15th, who this year are 1-0-1. Then they play the New York Islanders on Thursday, the 17th, who this year are 0-1-1. And then they will play on Saturday, the 19th. They will face the Carolina Hurricanes, who are 0-1-0 so far this year. They're gonna play more games before this happens, so those records will
yeah.
change. But that's where they're sitting now. Um,
The in Central Time, the Wild on Tuesday are at 6:30. The Islanders on Thursday is at 7 p.m. Central, and then the Hurricanes at 6 p.m. Central. So
cool. This is like a pretty solid week of matchups. I feel like
yeah,
it's we were sort of talking about the Kraken and Golden Knights being solid early tests. I think this is sort of a step above that. You've got um, two playoff teams last year and a Minnesota Wild team that is about even with you, maybe a little bit higher ceiling than you because of some of their young talent. But let's start with the first game against the Wild. What are you looking to see from the Blues? What do you know about the Wild going into it that you want to highlight?
I think this helps that it's at home,
Yeah.
because I think the home crowd is going to matter here. In the past couple years, the Wild have been the games against the Wild have gotten really chippy. I think ever since that Winter Classic, sort of Jordan Kyrou masterclass, like this team feels like they hate us, and then of course we bounce them in the playoffs that year later. So the Wild always feel like a rival, like a rival's rival game. So
Hmm.
playing at home will help for sure. Um, hosting them, but yeah, watch to see if like this game gets chippy, because that has been the calling card for these two teams facing off, which is fun, but also, it makes me hate the Wild. So I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, this is a team that's going to be like essentially jockeying for position with the Blues in the standings this year.
Hmm.
So really important game for that reason. Good to just see like how another opponent in our division is, if we can hold up to them, or yeah.
Yeah.
Haven't had an exciting start to their season in two games. Or I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. They have had an exciting start to their season in two games. Um, Kind of all around the board, pretty good performances. So yeah, I would say that this is a good team. It's going to be a good test, and of the three, I'm not really even sure which one I want to say, if there's any like easiest game. Like I think these are all kind of about the same level of like good NHL teams.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say that this game against Minnesota would be the easiest, but
You'd think, but it is a
yeah,
division rivalry.
yes,
Um,
that is true. And I
Maybe
would
they
like
play with a little more fire.
that's true. And then I would say like, well, the Islanders are better, but like I'm not so sure that's true. Like I'm not all that high on the Islanders. I do think it's safe to say that the game against the Canes is the hardest though. Will be like the toughest matchup.
I don't
Because
know,
hey,
because I'm
hey,
high on the Islanders and I'm lower on the Canes. So
the okay, interesting. Well, the Canes are my Stanley Cup pick. I just think, despite their losses, there's something like really healthy about the way that they are able to like just keep making good defensemen with their system. But um, anyways, in terms of like individual players that could be difference makers in this wild game, you've got Kaprizov obviously is like their star player who's got a goal and a few assists through the first couple games. Matt Boldy is off to a solid start. He's got 2 goals and 3 assists. Anyone else that you wanna highlight? Maybe a goaltender or anything like that.
Gustafson is their better goalie and will probably be in net if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Boulder's currently leading the team in points, 5 points in
Hmm.
two games. That's nothing to scoff at. So
Hey, it's no 6 points. Actually, no. Wait, they've played 3 games. Never mind. I was gonna say Vucinovic and Kyrie both have 6, but it's through 3 games, so never mind. Redact that. Um, let's move on to this Islanders game. So the Islanders last year they finished with a record of 39, 27, and 16, 94 points. They were third in their division, and they were a playoff team. They didn't go very far, but they did make the playoffs, which is more than we can say for the Blues. As I mentioned, this year they are 0-1-1. So what do you think we should look out for against the Islanders?
the well, Noah Dobson really like came onto the scene last year as one of their better players. He's just really good. So
Yeah.
yeah, a really good two-way defenseman. Outside of that, they have had a slow start to the season. They only have him and Duclair with one uh with more than 1 point on the year.
Hmm.
So um
Yeah, it's
but
rough.
yeah, they're still a good, like they've got a pretty good structure to their team, and yeah, they're a good team who's expecting to make the playoffs. So that isn't going to be an easy game to roll over, even if they've gotten a little bit of a slow start to the year so far.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, their last game they lost to the Dallas Stars, who I think we're all expecting to be one of the best teams in the league again. They got blanked, but they did lose in the first game of the season to the Utah Hockey Club, who in the early going do kind of look legit, like I was saying pre-show. But um,
Mm-hmm.
what about goaltending for the Islanders? Did you mention that already?
No, and I think that's a question for them. I mean, it's seeming like it's not going to be Sorokin,
Hmm.
um, who, according to an article at least, said that there is no timetable for his return yet. So they've had Varlamov playing, and Varlamov is kind of a, I don't know, okay at best.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Goalie. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say I'm looking for, I guess, the potential to take advantage of potentially weak goaltending. Varlamov has not looked good so far.
Yeah.
Um, so that could be a potential area where what is normally a strength for the Islanders that could be a way to exploit them.
Hmm. Yeah, especially in the early going here when they're already sort of off to a rough start. I think it would be important to try and take advantage of that, like you're saying. So hopefully at this point the Blues have come away with 2 wins so far in the week, and then they go to face the Carolina Hurricanes, who are a lock for the Stanley Cup, as I said already. The Canes last year were 52, 23, and 7, 111 points. They were second in the Met, and had a disappointing playoff run again. Um, but they're still a good team. I think they lost a lot of high level talent, for sure, this offseason. But I think I sort of put them in a similar, like, I'm not saying these teams are like the same at the same level, but I think in terms of like general vibe that I get from the two teams, I think they're a lot like the Stars in terms of just being like a well-run organization that's able to produce well from within. And I think despite their losses, that will continue, and they'll be able to find a way, um, especially if what's his name, Kochetkov, is that right? Can take another step
Mm.
forward and take over in net. But um, what what do you want to see from the Blues against this game? From the Blues in this game against the Canes, and what are some players that Carolina has that you want to keep an eye on in this one?
Um, I mean, their top of the lineup is really good. I think that's the strength of this team. I think their depth is where we can get them, though. I think they're not as deep a team as they once were. And so far, it seems like that is maybe if not a strength of the Blues, and then at least something that in a certain matchup, like a matchup, could favor us in that regard. And I think the Hurricanes, like our bottom six on their bottom six, if the WTF line still keeps pushing and shoving and shoving and pushing and playing hard, like there could be some that could be a way to break through this Hurricane structure. So I guess that's what I'll be looking for because they do have really good defensemen and goaltending.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess I just see such a solid team. They were supposed to have played another game by now, but it was scheduled to be at Tampa, and obviously with
Yeah.
the hurricane that just came through, that didn't happen. They will play. I just had it up, the New Jersey Devils, on Tuesday, so that'll be a test for them, and um, I'm sure we'll have additional thoughts as it gets closer to the game. Against the Blues. But that's sort of the the preview of the week. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up here?
Um, I don't think so. I think an exciting week of hockey to look forward to, as very
Yeah.
much will be like. I think after the next week, we can really start to solidify this team's identity.
Yeah, I do want to say, like, I'm trying to remember the exact stat, but isn't there something like if you're 4 or more points out of a playoff spot within like after like the first month or the first couple months or something. I'm trying to remember what the line is, but like there's like a historical trend that if you are if as a team you're more than 4 points out of a playoff spot after like the first month, I believe. Um, then like history shows you're not a team that makes the playoffs
Mm.
more often than not. And so it's really important that the Blues continue to play well. I guess we can argue about whether they have actually played well, but continue to get these victories, whether or not they look very convincing. So that'll be definitely and this will be an important week for that, especially against, like we said, 3 really solid teams. So it'll be a big early season test for the Blues, and we'll be here to cover it. So we'll be here to break down those 3 games just like we did with these 3. So if you want to keep up with that, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow the podcast wherever you listen. A 5-star rating also would help out a lot. You can also leave comments on Spotify, which is pretty cool now. And then you can follow along with us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. We post some cool stuff there, so we would appreciate if you want to follow along there as well. So that'll do it for this episode of Note News. We'll see you next time, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.